Hello and welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. I am your regular host on my podcast, Andy. John again will not be with us because we have a really generous paternity leave program here at the Purple Rock. So joining me is Matt. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thanks. Glad to be back yet again this season.
Yeah, so I guess the best thing to ask since you're here tonight are you ready to make big moves, Matt?
I am. I'm pushing John out. This is my first move towards that. He's not coming back. This is
Yeah.
my podcast now.
Well, now I need to worry because you flip on one person, and I don't know, maybe you might flip on me. I'm gonna start forming my counter alliance with someone else. Oh, and I just remembered I was gonna call you Mark. Oh, missed opportunity.
Oh, you blew
I
it!
blew it. Oh, live. If I would have gone this over again. So since I've already ruined the entire show, we might as well get into it. So last week, when people found out that there was going to be a double boot, and frankly, when people did the math that there was 8 people in 2 episodes, there was a little bit of whining about this. And I gotta say, now that we've seen the episode, were they right to complain that Survivor was cramming in 2 boots so late in the season? Or, did the show pick the right spot here?
Of course they weren't right. These were 2 insanely predictable boots. And even in the shortened time, the show tried to make them less predictable than I think they really were. I don't think these were ever really in doubt.
No, and I guess, and I mean, obviously I'm bringing this up because it's a wonderful opportunity for me to talk about how right I was, and I will never pass up that opportunity. Even when I'm wrong, I will not pass up that opportunity, but yeah, it's like, the writing was on the wall. This was going to be boring, and these episodes, this would have been so much more boring if it was 2 episodes. As it was plenty boring already.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like, people are like, oh, it'd be better earlier in the season. It's like, well, early in the season, you're servicing over a dozen people. This actually tends to be a pretty boring part of the show every season. Right. I mean, obviously there's exceptions, but yeah, once, the big move is made somewhere, it's a mini Pagani.
Right, exactly. Because, even if that Pagani doesn't last that long, there's usually a point where the show settles down just enough to get a couple people in a row from the same alliance. And while Will had flipped back and forth, a little bit there, he's not an intriguing enough character to build an entire episode around. And then going back to, and he was kind of with the Zeke Alliance before that, and then going back to Sunday there, you basically get 2 of the characters the show had invested the least in booted here. And so it's 2 of the characters we would really want the least amount about.
Yeah, and obviously, there's some of the, this happened, they were least developed because it happened this way. Yes. But it happened this way because I think the show looked at it and they realized, okay, well, we have a lot of people, it's only so many episodes. Nobody quit, nobody was medevaced. This story can do the most without these 2 people. And I think they made the right call because I'm enjoying the story. So I think, the evidence speaks for itself. This season has been fine without a heavy presence of Will and Sunday, who, I'm sure, are lovely people. But my priority as a viewer isn't that the people who are on the show get to see their best journey on the TV. Mine is, tell me a compelling story that matters to the overall narrative. And these are the characters from the book that you can excise when adapting it for television.
Right. And I think for this season, if you're going to lump 2 characters, 2 people on this season into one double boot episode, I don't really think you could have chosen better than these 2. Now, I see the point that in some seasons it might be good to have a double boot pre-merge. I think there is merit to sending both tribes, especially in, say, a 3-tribe format where sometimes one tribe never goes to tribal council, and then you have people who never have that. Sending both 2 tribes to tribal council there can be good because you see different tribal dynamics rather than one tribe always going. But in this season where every tribe went, where, you actually had a lot of parity, where there was a lot of interesting, both early and middle tribal councils, these were the 2 people that matter the least to the story. This was a good time to do the double boot.
Yeah, and I also say that, people are wondering why they didn't, lop off people so early, why they have so many people left. It's insurance.
Yeah.
And we're just coming right off of a season where they had 3 medevacs, one of which they were able to squeeze into another boot that episode, but then the other 2, that had to be the whole episode. And Survivor sucks when it doesn't end in Tribal Council. That's how they structure themselves. That's, the way episodes, are supposed to go. And when you have it so that you have a big episode and then somebody quits at the end, that's a deflating way to end an episode, to for the Survivor fan machine to go through an entire week where we, talk about Julie quitting or something. So that's why they have more people than they have episodes, because if somebody was taken out, and again, we're coming off a season where three people were taken out, then you're good. You have more spares. You squeeze 2 of those together, and then you move on from there. And if it doesn't happen, then you have to do something like this. It's a little unfortunate, but it actually worked out pretty well.
Right, exactly. And really all it means is actually what the actual impact on it for the production schedule has meant is that they've turned some late game reward challenges into immunity challenge.
Yeah.
That's what it actually means.
Now,
because they're just running an immunity challenge once a day for pretty much the last, I think, like 6 or 7 days of the game, rather than dispersing in a last reward or 2.
You and I talked about this offline, and it's kind of funny that this is the season that they decided to have a big, steal reward challenge and then, eliminate reward challenges.
Right. I mean, but that's the way the game broke. So
yeah, but that thing just became that much more useless for Jay. He got it after all the reward challenges were done. I mean, look, they might squeeze one in because maybe they'll get a couple votes in quickly next week, but doubtful. I will say, just the way that people were complaining about this, basically from Thursday on, this is just indicative of Survivor fandom. We, and I very much mean we in this respect, are so quick to complain about things before they happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, this isn't just Survivor fandom. This is fandom, right? This is, people whining, oh, they cast Chris Evans as Captain America or something. It's just just calm down. Yeah, look, it's okay that we had a double vote this week. And frankly, it'll probably be okay that we have 6 boots next week, because there's not usually a whole ton of story left at this point in the season. So
right, we know the story. It's really just there's not a lot of interesting scrambling. What scrambling there is usually pretty to the point and quick, because you don't have to run around and corral a big alliance. It's like you need to flip 1 or 2 people at most. And if you have to flip 2, it's usually because they're together, not because they're apart.
Yeah, I mean, often the finale is okay, we've got this core alliance, one last survivor left. Will he win immunity or will he not? And frankly, I think that's what it's going to be like next week. So
I agree, because you got an alliance, and then you got Jay, and I guess Brett's still around, but he's not winning immunity.
No, so it was fine. It wasn't a good episode. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm grateful that it was only one not good episode, because I'm not sure there was another point this season where we had 2 in a row that would have smashed together really well. And obviously, the season was a little slow starting, but you can't do 2 boots right away. We're still trying to meet these people. So then it's what? I mean, and if you do the send 2 tribes together, we could have lost somebody awesome.
Yeah.
We could have lost Zeke. We could have lost Adam, So, if we lost a few Sunday confessionals, it's not so bad. To the point where my point about this not being a great episode, it's the big story of the episode was the downfall of Will. And I flat out asked you, is there anything left to talk about? We already talked about the downfall of Will last week.
Yeah, I mean, which commenter was it that said that Will is the anthropomorphic sad trombone?
That was I remember that too. Hurley tennis. We had
I mean, that's all there is to say.
Will. Yeah, I would say and we covered this a bit last week, but I think it's worth going over again, because we saw how badly he played it, and he did. And obviously a lot of that's the edit talking about it, but I don't know if there's a good way that Will could have ever played this, because I don't think he was wrong that he needed to do something to get people to respect him. I think the thing is there's nothing he could do.
I mean, I think people might respect the move, but they don't necessarily respect him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that was the I think that's the essential problem that any teenager is going to face, which is that you might respect what they do in the game in a sense, but at the end of the day, you still associate it with a teenager, and there's lots of things about teenagers that you don't respect.
Yeah, and then part of it, like, is, and the reason why it didn't, look good for him, and obviously one reason is because the edit made sure it didn't look good for him. But is that, he was always very so much about, well, I'm a big man now, I'm going to do me some moves. It's just like, yeah, it's like, what does a teenager need to do these things in a respectful way? It's like, well, have a skill set and a mature level that you just physically can't, Like, even the most mature 18-year-old, you're still 18, your brain is still forming, you're still not, going to be able to, be seen as an equal with people. And I think that's what happened. His idea of making moves was okay, but the way he was talking about it and how it was so very clearly driven by his need to be accepted, a need that arises due to his own youth. It's just like, what are we doing, Survivor, really? Because it's not like they loved Will so much once he was out there that it was like, this is totally worth it. It's not like they loved Julia so much. Natalie Tenorelli was second place and barely a character in her season. It's been done. It's not worth it for anybody involved. And I don't even mind, like, they cast people not to win. They cast plenty of people not to win. But they're not even entertaining because they can't be. They're younger than everybody and they're treated as such.
I think, though, they cast a Will, I think they cast certain people like that more to throw a monkey wrench in other people's plans. It's not even that they don't cast them to win. It's they cast them as a specific type of obstacle. It's the same reason why they still cast these stubborn old men. It's because there's a specific type of obstacle that a teenager poses or that a 70 whatever year old man like Joe from last season poses that forces other people to work around and can make for some very frustrating moves. Like, do we have someone flipping on Zeke there if he's not an 18-year-old trying to prove himself? Like, I don't know, but that really made everyone else react to it in a way.
Yeah, and also, like, that's what happened with Will. The past teenagers, they just do whatever the big boys tell them to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think your point is right that they're trying to get a different dynamic. Like, teen drama is exciting, but when it's among other teens, right?
Right.
They don't get to be big drama because the adults kind of take over and they listen to them because they kind of need them to survive, And it's just like, Will hasn't lived outside of home at this point. Like, the Will Wall that exists in the universe now, that's already spent a semester in university, is probably already way ahead, more likely to do well than the one that was literally going to high school.
Yep.
So that's enough about him, and frankly, we don't even have anything to say about Sunday. Except, I will say this, and it's not even on there, I think she was really nice. I do, but oh well,
Yeah. I mean, it might have even been that she was good at the game, but I mean, I don't think there was anything about her character that was interesting beyond the fact that she was nice. Like,
yeah, I think she played all right. It just in a way that doesn't translate to television. And then if you don't win, it doesn't matter, And frankly, sometimes when you do win that way, it only slightly matters. So.
Right. I mean, and one of the things that Sunday actually mentioned in her exit interviews, and I think I actually do believe this exit interview, even though I usually say don't believe anything from exit interviews, is that she was talking to everyone and she had relationships with everyone. And that, for instance, she knew that during the Rock vote that it was going against her because Hannah stopped talking to her. Hannah stopped talking to her. So, I mean, like, that's a good read. That's an interesting read.
Yeah. No, I think she played a good social game, but I don't know if it ever would have won. I mean, maybe she would have got, if she had gone against people that they hated in a jury situation, maybe, but.
Right. Brett, I mean, like, does she get more votes than Brett?
Maybe. I think people probably liked her a little better, but yeah, it's like, what can you talk about? It's like, hey, Sunday, she got along with people until they decided to get rid of her. Like, the more interesting conversation with Sunday is in relation to Hannah. Because Hannah decided to vote out Sunday, and does that make any sense?
No. I mean, it does, but only in the sense that Hannah's not playing a good game, and so this is part and parcel of that. Look, I think
Let
Okay,
the
fine.
hate spill.
I'm going full bore. I think that Hannah is probably a really nice person. I don't think she's interesting TV. I think that she can be funny TV, especially earlier in the game. But I think she's not good at the game in the same way that we were talking about Adam not being good at the game earlier in the season. I think that her neuroses are very heavy burden on her fellow survivors, and I think that's something that will always impact her because they don't think of her as someone who maybe has a good read or is making big moves. They think of her as someone that they have to coach through her latest panic attack.
And you just compare her to David. David had similar anxieties and all that, but he is conquering them. He is, right. and people are seeing it that way. Whereas I think you're right. I think when Hannah gets in front of the jury, I'll flat out say, they are going to probably lay into her for the fact that they expended a lot of trouble, coddling her, making her feel better, only for her to then vote them out. And look, obviously it's her prerogative to vote people out. She is a player in the game, but I wouldn't feel good about that either. It's like, I was helping you in a way that was like superseded the game, and you backstabbed me.
Right, exactly. I mean, and I think that's the thing. She talked in this episode about the fact that she owed different people. The first rule of Survivor is this: you don't owe anyone. It doesn't matter what happens. You don't owe anyone, and it's what returnees talk about. When they talk about their big mistakes on their first time, it's they felt they owed someone, and then that person got them because you don't owe anyone. And remembering, people will help you, but you should never feel indebted. And one of the problem is that she feels indebted to a lot of people. She feels indebted to too many people because everyone is out there helping her in different ways. And, it's not too dissimilar in some ways from the Dawn game, only where the Dawn game is about making a connection and then using that connection to backstab someone. The Hannah game is about making people make that connection. It's people are going, she is forcing them to make the connection to her rather than making the connection to them, and then she's stabbing them. So it's like she's actually requiring more of them than I think Dawn did. And I think that type of game is just...
It's a loser's game as much as Russell Hanson is a loser's game.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you recognize it as a loser's game, then vote out Sunday. Make sure that you're the loser in the final tribal. Get that extra couple, like 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is for third place. Get that money.
Yeah, and I do think that's the question. Should she have let David go or, voted for Jay and see, and if it happens to be David, so be it. She wanted to, take out the person that was the biggest threat to her position. And I see that. She probably was. Frankly, Adam seemed to be entertaining the notion that maybe he could go to the end with Brett and Sunday. Yep. So it's good to take away that if your goal is to end. If your goal is to win, Sunday is one of the people that maybe possibly you could beat. Although, frankly, right. I don't think she could have beaten Sunday anyway, so it doesn't matter. I think but she won't turn against David. Right. She flipped from Zeke's majority to draw rocks to be with David. So I think what's happening with Hannah, and I think I don't think this is a big leap to go to, psychologically, is David and Ken have made her feel secure. And every decision she makes from that is secure. And she'll talk to other people. She'll talk to Hannah or Adam. She'll talk to us and say it's about strategy or whatever. She'll concoct these Sunday things. But really, she is somebody, as evidenced by, a lot of actions she took, felt incredibly insecure, right? She's the one that took, 10 minutes to vote when somebody, blindsides her at tribal council with the vote. She's the one who, had, nearly died when Michaela gets voted out. Even when Adam is taking all that heat from Taylor, she's hyperventilating. Yep. She felt really out of place this whole game. And Ken and Adam have given her a place where she doesn't feel that. And she's not going to give that up. That's her, and everybody likes to think that you're going to play, a big game and you're going to do these things. But I think a lot more people than not in Survivor crave some level of security.
Yes.
And they'll rationalize it as much as they want that this is about the game and you got to build trust and all of that. But really, she feels more comfortable with David, who I think relates to her in a way that nobody else there could. And Ken, who, as much as everybody wants to now talk how he's this useless weirdo, has really connected with the other weirdos like herself.
Right.
And I think that's all this is. And that's why she's going to go to the end with them and lose happily, because for her Survivor adventure, she finally felt comfortable.
No, and I agree. And and the thing is this, she probably maintains in the back of her mind, look, I can still get David at 4.
Yeah, that's the classic. People do that a lot, and then they never do.
Right. That's what Jervis did. Jervis, with Tyson, he was like, oh, I can keep Tyson around. I'll just get him at 4, which is just, come on now, man.
Yeah, I mean that's Steven's move with JT, right? And I'll even believe, or and with Jeremy, this is the classic Fishback move. And I know even give them some of them probably really thinking of this and discovering that this is a difficult spot, but often to win, you're going to have to put yourself in a difficult spot, and I don't see Hannah ever doing that. I think too much of the game is already a difficult spot for her, and and in some ways I get it. I get that David feels more secure than Adam ever will, and we got this from her early in the season, that Adam feels wishy-washy. He's going to do stuff. I think this is the great strength of the David-Ken alliance, is that they've been an alliance, a true partnership, none of this trust cluster, any of that stuff that's going on. These two have been ride or die from the very beginning. The stories have been out there, not just from themselves, but from everybody else. And I think that appeals to her. These are the loyal people. Everybody else is doing crazy stuff. These are the loyal people. And whether she's going to win or lose, I don't even think it's on her mind. She feels like she's on borrowed time, and these people have been helping her.
Isn't it funny how even earlier this season, but especially in past seasons, people are really cognizant of breaking up strong pairs? And David and Ken have been the strongest pair all season. Those guys have never wavered for each other. The one time they did was when David played the idol for Jessica.
Yeah, which Ken didn't bother Ken. It was just Jessica had failed his test, and she could vote for her.
And it's very high standards. Okay, I mean he's Ken. He needs those. But I mean those guys are just they right, as you said, they're ride and die. No one's been interested in breaking them up because they're a strong pair. They've been interested in breaking them up because,
David is one of them.
Right, David's one of them. Or the one time they targeted Ken, well, they almost targeted Ken because they didn't think they could get David.
Yeah. But no, they're not worried about the two. And I think that probably speaks more to how people are assessing Ken's chances to win. And they're like, okay, well, David we got to beat, but Ken, he can be around. Before we move on from the Hannah discussion, John couldn't podcast tonight. It just couldn't work out timing-wise. And frankly, we said, well, this is an episode you could miss. But the one thing he wanted to talk about was Hannah, because he also wanted to rant about her. So I told him he could write something down, and I would just read it out. So this is my John impression, I guess. He sounds like me, so it doesn't really matter. So Hannah, a failure in 5 acts. So I don't think it's going to be positive. Put that out. 1, Hannah seems to think she can beat Adam and Ken. This is at least excusable because I can see thinking that in the show, thinking that while you're in the game but not watching the show. 2, Hannah took out Will, who everyone can beat. Mildly excusable because he's a completely unreliable vote. And I'll say, I have no problem with everybody deciding to vote out Will. It's not always about who you can beat at the end. It's who's going to be this obstacle towards you getting there. And somebody who's behaving like he is, just get rid of him. You need that wild card out of the deck.
Right, especially because Will basically not only broadcasted they did this to make a big move, but that he broadcasted that he would be flipping back and forth, which means he's unreliable to everyone.
Yeah, even if you think you're using him, he might be using you, and he might be gone before he ever proves useful. Yeah. No, this is the Abby thing. You don't keep Abby. I don't care if you think you need her to move on. If you need Abby, you've already lost. 3, Hannah refuses to let David be taken out in the idol playing Crossfire, even though the consensus is he's a viable winner. Yeah, that's not a great play. I think it's discussed. 4, Hannah takes out Sunday because she's worried Adam will make Sunday a goat. Hannah needs 2 goats to win. which is fair. I think she's the biggest goat out there, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And 5, Hannah credits Will for saving her to Adam, who played his idol for her. Hey, do you remember when Sandra and Jerry thanked Amanda for saving them since Amanda tipped off Parvati to the hero's targets? I think that was sarcasm. I can't tell. He didn't use the font. Yeah, that was actually weird, huh?
That was super weird. You think maybe she was like, maybe she and like Adam have like a weird relationship where she says something blatantly, false to him to get, to get him riled up, and then they don't show the reaction there?
I do not know what it's like to have a relationship where you say things to somebody just to get them riled up, but sure.
Okay.
No, I mean, I was like, what? It seems like it happened a lot this season where people like ascribe the actions to like somebody else, like, and like Jessica's like, thank you for saving me, Ken. It's like, here is my advantage, advantage, I guess it is. Hey, that thing still exists, by the way. What a dynamic piece of television that was. But yeah, and if they were saying it in Will's presence, I get it. Because you're trying to fluff him up and maybe keep him as an alliance partner. So it's like, hey, Will, that was all you. Good job, buddy.
Good job, Will.
But if she's saying it to Adam, she'd be like, well, he didn't really save us. It's like, cool, he voted for us, but we were safe no matter what. In fact, if you felt so sure about him playing or saving us, I could have saved my idol,
Right. I mean, maybe they were like, hey, we'll tip this off to where the vote was going, but then why did they trust
play the idol? That's right. Well, I mean, it's because of her preternatural understanding of where the vote is always going, as long as it's going towards her.
I wonder if she'll understand in Final Tribal that the vote is not going towards her then.
You know what? I'm going to say yes. I think she's going to know going in that she doesn't have a good chance. And maybe she'll even be like, oh, why didn't I take people out? And frankly, that's going to be another line of attack. Your big plan was to sit against David. We tried to, if you would have played with me, you would have had a shot at it. Even though everybody who wanted to play with her also thought that they could beat her. Speaking of tribal council, and we'll go back to Will's because, Probst was really leaning into the big moves talk.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, I, who am, a fan of big moves in Survivor, was like, okay, that's enough. But I think that what we need to talk about is, I think this is as good a moment as any to really assess big moves in Survivor. Probst obviously is very much pushing it, and he has an agenda to do so. Whether it's true or not isn't important, and we should recognize this living in a post-truth world as we are. He wants people to think that because I think it does make better television. Absolutely. There are super fans who react against that. Because, well, for one, there's super fans who will react against everything that Jeff Probst says, but also because of the countless examples that it wasn't true, especially the person who just won last season. So where are we right now in the Survivor world in a post-Michelle world?
In terms of whether big moves are good? Is that what you're asking?
Sorry. Whether they're actually a good thing or if it's just overrated. If they play a factor, or if you need to be the player that ignores all of that stuff, because as this season has pointed out, the people who seem to be most focused on this seem to be on Ponderosa.
Yeah, this is what I think of big moves. I think, and this is a wishy-washy answer, but there are certain people that need to make big moves, and then there are certain people that do not. The people that need to make big moves are actually not the people you would expect. The people that need to make big moves are the people that have people gunning for them the entire time. Chris needs to make a big move because otherwise everyone's going to notice that he is Chris, that he's this big, likable alpha male, and they are going to target him like they did. There are certain, I feel like Tony needed to make big moves, and he made a lot of big moves because Tony was a shark. He had to stay swimming, but it was also because if he ever stopped, the target would flip to Tony. Tony could never stop making big moves because then he would be the target. So I think there are certain people that have to make big moves. Then there are other people who don't. Denise did not have to make a big move in Philippines. She had to make one move. She had to time it just right. And that was, she had to get out Malcolm. Now, she made lots of other small moves to help position herself to where she only needed to make the one bigger move, but she did not need to make big moves. She had the game won by making the one move.
Yeah, Sophie's entire game was predicated on the elimination of big moves.
Right.
It was all like her alliance wanted to do them. It's like, whoa, slow your roll. That's because the game was set up in her advantage, and she just needs to maintain status quo. I'm not against big moves in the way other people have. I mean, I'm the guy who very correctly said that when David played his idol, that was a good move.
Yep.
Kind of seems like that might have been true, that maybe it did change the perception of David as this weak, under thing that we can just tack on the end of our alliance to, oh, wait, he's a real player who we should start thinking of in a different way and voting for at the end. I was incredibly right when I said that taking out Michaela was a risk worth taking because, hey, look who's in the finale. No.
Look who are the two people that everyone says we need to beat, going into this finale. It's David and Jay.
Yeah. And I don't think, him voting out Michaela put a target on him. As you say, he's a player that's always going to have a target. So, if the move is there and you need to take it. I think what people need to do is, you need to be prepared to make a big move in Survivor.
Yes.
But you shouldn't be looking to make a big move in Survivor.
Exactly.
If you can set things up so you're okay, then it's mostly about the small moves. It's mostly, a lot of it's not even moves, right? But if you can assess where you are and realize that either a big threat is coming or I am not in a good spot, then do it. Put yourself out there, make a big move, and if you fail, well, so did 18 other people. Almost everybody loses who plays Survivor, and that's frankly true of people who play it many times. It's hard to win, and a lot of it is just random. A lot of people play good games and lose. At least one of them will lose this season. So, you need to be willing when it's that situation to know when the risk of not doing something outweighs the risk of doing something, and then you just do it. And you accept the risks the way they are. And when is that time? I don't know. It's tough, man. That's why it's hard.
Well, and because it changes every season. Because that's the thing. Like, every season's different. Some seasons they're going to react very strongly to any move made. So that if you make that move too early, that means that you're now the one being gunned for and that you're going home the next week. If you make that, there are some seasons where if you make it too late, no one gives you any respect. They're like, what were you doing this entire game? You have to read how the season's going. You got to react to that vibe. One of the things about the show is that because the winner is judged by the jury, you have to play the jury's game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if the jury is a jury that likes big moves, guess what? They're going to reward someone who's made a big move at the end. So in this season, where a lot of the jury does seem to like big moves, I think you do need to make a big move.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. If you're somebody who's sitting there saying, come on, Probst, shut up. We don't need big moves. Look at Michelle and favoriting her tweets and all of that about this. Then I hope you're saying that Ken is going to win the season. Because if you're saying that Ken's not going to win the season, it's because this jury isn't going to respect Ken. And one of the reasons, one of it is because he's a weirdo. But one of it is because he's just been kind of sitting back and doing his, classic Survivor thing and being about honor and fishing and, that sort of thing.
Right.
I don't think this jury is going to respect that. And that's because it's full of people who wanted to do something, wanted to play. And to your point, if you're in that situation, then you better, if not have a big move, you have to be the person that was in control that befuddled all big moves, right? Like Jeremy didn't make very many big moves. He played an idol twice, 2 idols. Those would be big moves. But the rest of it was basically, keeping the big moves from, out there and not affecting him. Right. So if you can do that, great. But otherwise, you better have something. And also, I just caution anybody of saying, the way Michelle Fitzgerald played is a high, probability chance to play. There was a bit of luck involved, is all I'm saying. We should clear right now. Didn't invalidate it. Luck is a huge factor in Survivor. Whoever wins this season will be incredibly lucky. If for no other reason than most of them were involved in a game of chance for their survival in the game. But people were eliminated in unusual ways that season. So, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, yeah, Probst is pushing it too far. And look, it's just agenda. It makes better television. And
Absolutely.
everybody who argues that, well, then tell me how many times you've had great conversations about those, low-key social moves, How many listicles did you make of the time that somebody sat with somebody and got to know their family? No, we celebrate the big moments of the show. The best episodes ever is when something happened. So the best seasons ever are when things happen. So yeah, the producer of Survivor is telling people that you need to make big moves to win this game. It might be complete BS. His motivation isn't to help you win; it's to make a better television show.
Right. Really what he's saying is that you need to make big moves if you want to come back to be a returnee.
Well, and that's the one other thing of why big moves might be a good idea is, and this can go back to the episode we just watched. Sunday didn't make big moves.
Nope.
Sunday wasn't on this season very much. And most people, as I just said, are going to lose this season. So if you want to go out there and you really want to be on Survivor, then maybe you need to do something. Because if you don't, and you don't win, you're not going to be on the show very much. If you don't make many big moves and you do win, then apparently you get all the key confessionals that most of us don't notice.
Right, and never say anything else.
And then you get jerks like me invalidating your win at every turn. So again, maybe that's a good argument for big moves.
Yeah, I mean, why the hell would you want that?
Okay, so I think while these were largely perfunctory episodes, I think there was one standout scene. A scene that frankly isn't well in our format to talk about because we like to smile and make laughs. But the scene between Adam and Jay I thought was really good, and not just obviously the biggest part of it was heartwarming human interest, which is why I actually think this season has been very successful. They've had emotional moments, and frankly, like these, we like all the people, well, one degree or another. But I also thought it was just kind of interesting in a way that I don't know if Survivor's ever like this, where they were having a very frank conversation about how they were going head to head, what Adam was planning on doing, Jay's recognition of it, and they were just talking about it. What did you think of this scene?
I really like the scene. First of all, I thought that it kind of, I think it kind of brought into clarity the relationship that had been kind of that had been present throughout the season, but I think was kind of hard to define. They actually defined what that relationship was. Well, okay, Jay tried to define it and called it the wrong thing because that's not what yin yang is. But his description of their relationship was accurate and it was spot on. They have this kind of love-hate, push-pull relationship where they actually do seem to get along, and yet they don't get along at all, when it comes to the game. There's a personal connection there and there's a very much not a game connection. And it's actually, that's something else that's actually been present for everyone throughout the season, which is that there has been a remarkable amount of camaraderie in this cast, it seems. There's been very little kind of negativity, very little hate thrown at each other. I mean, that's why that one moment with Brett, a couple of tribal councils ago stood out, because it felt so out of place in this season. It's not that would have felt out of place anywhere. It felt out of place in this season where everyone is treating each other so nicely, basically.
Yeah, no, people are generally cordial, and that was a little bit of invective that hasn't been present. And
right.
Clear to the season, it was so brief, right? It happened and it didn't, and it happened at the most tense part of the season that had been or has been since. Yeah, I mean, I can't even think there. If you wanted to build a rival season of this, I guess you could do Adam and Jay, because not all rivalries have to be negative, but the Lucy episode, I guess, was probably about as mean as it got. Yeah. Obviously, Michaela and Figgy didn't really get along. That's something. But right. Even Taylor and Adam, he booked out his girlfriend. He's all that. He's still food. They're still broing down. It's kind of.
Yeah. I mean, So I think that scene was actually kind of. I think it spoke to why I like this season a lot, because the cast seems to really like each other, and even when they don't leak each other, they treat each other with respect. I wish all seasons were like that. There are some recent seasons that really could have benefited from that.
Yeah, no, and this sometimes it's because there are older players that are just a little too moralistic, and it prevents people from having this level of camaraderie. But no, yes, I think I wish more was like this, because the way we enjoy Survivor is it's a game, and we like to see people play it. We recognize that it's human beings doing human things, but it's better when everybody kind of puts the moralizing aside and recognizes, like, we're all still going to be people when this is over. We just kind of are playing, and that's the sense that I got from that, because Adam, when Jay's like, "Come on, dude, why are you doing this to me?" and it's like Adam's just like, "Yeah, I can't have you at the end if I want to win, and
right.
having that idol is going to be a problem with it. So, like, we could still work together, but you can't have that over me." And I like that.
Yeah, no, and I did too. I mean, right. I mean, and speaking again to the benefit of the season, is there anything worse than someone saying, "I don't like you because you voted me out," when they voted you out because you were trying to vote them out?
Yeah, that would never happen ever. And,
No.
It's never happened where, like, somebody who everybody beloved in a season voted against the better player in the final jury, and then nobody, like, faults them for it. It's always the other two guys' fault.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and then, like, there was a bit of that with Sunday and Jessica. And if you watched their Ponderosa, it actually was a real thing. Jessica actually was sending Sunday vibes, like, I don't like you, I'm not happy with you. But whether it's just for show, because Ponderosa is also a show, or not, like, by the end they made up for it, and it's been present throughout Ponderosa, where people were kind of letting it wash over, and enjoying the fact that they've had the Survivor experience. And I think this is the good part of having a lot of fans. Everybody's always said, cast more fans, not these recruits. I've never really been on that, because a lot of fans suck as television. And you think that this season would have been it, because they really had to go out and look for people for this team. But no, they've gotten a lot of fans, and it's not just super fans, the way we define it, right? It's not just people that have, been on Reddit or whatever, or, one day maybe somebody who's on Purple Rock will be on the show.
Oh, God.
I don't mean one of us. I mean, like, a commenter or something. I mean,
I'm sure they'll do really well in their 19th place finish.
Sure, but like, there's so many ways of being fans of Survivor, and that we've seen that. Chris is a big fan of Survivor, to the point where, like, he mapped out where everybody's from on his law website, which is weird. Sunday, huge fan. She was talking about how she always watches the Ponderosas. Like, it's not just young people that love the show and even love it in extra ways. David and Adam and Zeke are bonding over the podcast they listen to, and frankly, because maybe they should have been listening to a different one, and things would have gone better for them.
All right.
I know. Well, why not us, man? Is it because I'm constantly insulting you and all that? Come on.
That might be why not us.
That could be. It's possible. But you know what? I'll take it, because I don't do this for you, Survivors. I do it for the fans who get so angry when I make fun of the people they like, and Guis, who loves it when I do the same.
Guis.
So, but no, I mean, it was a great scene, and so it should be said, it was also incredibly touching. I do like how, like, as soon as it hit Jay, he just pulls the mask over his eyes.
Right.
What do you think it means for the story of the season? Is it telling us that these two, it's really about these two, and that's what the final episode's going to be?
I don't think so.
Me neither.
No, I don't. I mean, I kind of, like, want it to be that way. I think that'd be a really interesting story. I think it was a really good moment. I think, just like Zeke and Brett's moment, this was a really good moment, and you include it. Now, the one way I could see it impacting the story is that Jay tells everyone that Adam's mom is dying, and that puts a target on Adam's back.
You think you do that?
I don't know, but that is one way I could see it happening.
Yeah, I'll say I also don't think that this is that it's necessarily that this is the story of these two going head to head. I mean, it could be. Either of these two guys could definitely win. I think it's actually kind of a toss-up between the three. Obviously, I have my idea who it is, but Adam could definitely win. Jay could definitely win. But to your point, like, they're going to include this. Survivor loves this stuff. They didn't cast a guy whose mom is dying of cancer to not use it. Like, they're going to use it. And I think everybody always gets so excited when some personal moment's like, that's it. They're going to be a winner. And sometimes it works out, right? Like Jeremy talking about his baby, was real. It was part of his winner's edit. But Survivor is going to use it. This is a show who earnestly and unironically says, now we're going to bring you some love. So yeah, if that scene happens amongst two of their featured characters, they're going to use it, whether they are 6 and 5 or whether they are 1 and 2.
No, and I agree entirely. It's something they have to use.
And frankly, especially for this episode, as we're saying, it was maybe the only thing worth a damn for the entire episode. All right, so I have a couple more players left. I don't have a smooth transition, so I'm just going to do it that way. I want to talk a bit about Brett, because I don't think we're going to be doing it next week.
Nope.
I've actually been really impressed with his under-the-radar game. I don't think it's a winning game, especially in this season, as we've talked about. But that guy has taken a lot of L's, and he has recovered from them about as smoothly as anyone I've ever seen.
I do like how his move after every time he's on the wrong side of a vote is he goes up to the person and says, you know what? I was going to take him out anyway on my own, so I have no ill will. What do you say we move forward together?
And it's worked every time.
Well,
I mean, like, that person is wanting to work with him. It hasn't worked in the sense that he's actually put himself in the right position to move forward, but people believe him.
Well, it did work one time, which is it worked with Zeke, and then Will flipped on them.
Yeah.
That was the time when it worked. And if you think of his position in that Zeke group, that's a pretty good position, actually.
It should have worked, yeah.
Right, it should have worked. Like, yes, he would have to take out Zeke at some point, and yes, they'd have to take out Jay at some point. But, that's not a bad position in that group, and that was the time when it really worked at its best.
Yeah, and it should have been like Sunday, him, Zeke, Adam, Hannah. That gives Brett a lot of options for possibly winning.
Yep. No, absolutely. But once again, it's I would say the problem with this move is that it requires one person to be in charge of multiple people. Because every time he does it to the one person that he sees as being in charge. And then it's one of that person's, according to him, followers that then doesn't follow. Mm-hmm. Hannah threw up the roadblock to Adam here. Will threw up the roadblock to Zeke, a couple episodes ago. It's not, Zeke that's turning on him. It's not, Adam that's turning on him. Or I don't think that this was necessarily an Adam-related move in this Sunday vote, but, this is someone else's turns. And, I don't think he's shoring up the rest of those relationships.
Yeah, no, I don't want to go crazy, oh, he's playing awesome, but this is a guy who should have been dead in the water at the swap, right? Him and Sunday versus with 3 millennials. The millennials that seemed like they weren't going to turn on each other, the ones that didn't seem like they had any outside grievances to take care of, and if they lost that night, he probably would have gone home because he would have been the more obvious threat. I mean, maybe it's Sunday, but they probably could recognize that they don't need Brett's strength so much when they had, Michaela and Jay. And he's still there, man, and so from that perspective, from a guy who's been, really swimming upstream, I think it's been good. And frankly, if he had this attitude a bit more early on, he might have done better, right? He could have been a little more magnanimous with David or Jessica. Then maybe he could have gotten in with the right people at the right time. But yeah, I like what he's been able to do from the long odds that he's faced. It's hasn't been a winning game, although I think there was probably a scenario not long ago that he probably still had a chance at it. We would never think he had a chance at it because the edit clearly told us he didn't. But he could get Chris's vote, he could Taylor's vote, or it's still it's possibly in play. And frankly, the way he went up to people and said, "Oh no hard feelings, everything's good," gave him a chance at their vote. Zeke and him had a moment. So it's been a good showing for a guy who, is not going to factor very much at the end.
I agree.
So there's another guy that a lot of people thought was really going to factor at the end. I was one of them. You were one of them.
I was.
Is Ken dead in the water, or is he still a contender?
Yes.
I think both of those things are true, yes.
No, I think he's dead in the water. It pains me to say this, but could Ken win? Yes, but he's not going to. The only scenario Ken wins is the scenario that's just not going to happen, and I think that's the Ken, Hannah, and Brett scenario, because at this point, I don't think he beats Adam. I used to think very strongly that he beat Adam as recently as 2 weeks ago. Really, I thought that Adam's played a really good game the past couple episodes, and I think everyone is noticing that. And I think if Adam were to get to the end with Ken and Hannah, I think Adam wins. I don't think Ken wins that.
Yeah, I think Adam's, had a few things break his way, and I think, and he's helped them break this way. For one, it's just like everybody has been kind of jumping in front of him, doing other dumb things, so that like his dumb things don't seem so dumb anymore. And to his credit, he's let it happen. Once he took a few blows, he kind of stepped back, or at least that's what it seems. It could just be the edit stepped him back a bit until it was time for him to come back out. The other thing is, I think people have been around him long enough to recognize that maybe some of those personality flaws aren't necessarily indicative of like a kind of a sneaky, slimy guy, but just, like personal foibles that, don't denote bad things, just like, oh, that Adam. Now, I will say the flip side of that is the jury members haven't. And so, do you think Taylor is going to feel that good about him? Chris, no. Michelle. So I think there's enough. Here's where I think Ken could still win. I agree with you that I think it's a low percentage play at this point, just because the way the show is treating him, it's a real thing. We could explain it away for a few weeks, but it's been enough now that it's kind of doubtful. And also just the way people are treating him. The fact that they're not targeting him, I think tells us what they feel about him. But we don't think this is going to be a bitter jury. They haven't seemed bitter in Ponderosa. They haven't been seen bitter as they were voted off. But we should never rule out juries just surprisingly being bitter. And if that's what happens, if suddenly just this waft of betrayal just seeps through Ponderosa, Ken is the one that doesn't betray people. I think right now it's working against him. People are kind of like, dude, the rest of us are getting our hands dirty, and you're talking about vinyl and fish. Like, I've been trying to work with you, and you won't do what I say. You won't play ball, and that's frustrating. But if they get to the end, and like I think Hannah's is going to get it, just filleted by no matter who she's up against. If the other person had to do something that really sat wrong with people, and be that person David or Adam, because Jay no shot, nobody has a shot against Jay, but then maybe Ken becomes that that viable protest vote. Maybe suddenly the way he's played all season, which was frustrating, comes into light. It's like, okay, he hasn't played the Survivor I'd like him to play. Sometimes listening to him prattle on, while beautiful to look at, was annoying to be around, but I get it. He is who he is, and he never pretended to be anything else, and I feel good. I'm okay with writing him down, because I can't write down David Adam or whatever. So I think that's still in play. I can't rule it out because I'm coming off of a season where Michelle beat Aubrey.
Right. No, and I would agree that is in play in terms of the game, but I don't think that's what the show is telling us, and that's why I don't think Ken has a chance to win.
Yeah, and the way, like, if I want to do a little bit of edit reading, it's just like, it's clear that people think he's a weirdo. The show really hasn't made it that clear. It's the extra stuff that does that. And it's like, well, maybe they're not doing that because he ends up winning. And it's like, well, then they should show other things. Maybe he's the boring dude, man. Like, I think he's really interesting in a way that doesn't translate at all into Survivor, especially this season of Survivor.
Yes.
Where people are, actively doing things. I think, because I think he's genuine, and it's really weird and off-putting.
You know how we talked about how much we like the Jay and Adam conversation? You know, one of the things I've really liked throughout the season are the Ken and David conversations.
Yes.
Those are always just fascinating conversations of two people who have been allies, kind of, talking to each other on how to support each other and each other in the game.
What if David ends up becoming a huge Ken advocate by mistake at Final Tribal Council? Yeah, like,
that would be.
I got here because Ken really helped me out in all of this.
That would be hilarious. I'd love that. That'd be hysterical.
But ultimately, like, I don't think that's what's going down. But it's why I can't rule him out. And a lot of it, maybe it's just the Michelle corollary. Just like, but I mean, there's differences between the two. She was an outsider. She was able to claim outsider status, even though she actually did vote out most of the people that were there. Right. The ones that actually got voted out, asterisks. But so he won't have that. He's voted out everybody in this game that he attended tribal council except for Lucy. And then David is actually 10 for 10 in his votes. So yeah, he won't have that, but it could just be like, Ken didn't really betray me. I always knew where like Ken was, and I now can respect that, even though I don't quite get him. That could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. So what do we think is going to happen? Time for predictions. We're going to predict 6th through 1st, and this is a little bit of worrying for you because you are going to give away your secrets before anybody else votes. The good news is you have a 2-vote lead, so if they just steal yours, they're doomed anyway.
That's right, yeah, because I am crushing the predictions this season. I actually looked back through to see what the winning score was in past seasons. It was 6, and I'm at 8.
Yeah, it's actually tough because the tally at the bottom of my chart is all JPEGs. I don't think I've made those higher numbers. I think probably the highest number I've ever made is the 7 that you're currently at.
Yeah, no, man,
more work for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, but no, it's definitely I feel uncomfortable because now people will know exactly where to change their vote, and I think when I read this, there's one easy change that will make up that two person difference if they want to. There's a couple.
The good news is you can't get all of them to agree. It's not fair. It's like all the readers. It's like one guy might actually be outperforming you, but it doesn't matter. They're all the same guy to us. Now the thing is, that's also the advantage, right? We all feel like we got to like personalize our picks and do something, whereas they just get the wisdom of the crowd. So that's why the readers are always like 1st or 2nd in this every year.
Yeah, I mean, and as recently as I think 2 weeks ago, there was someone who was trying to metagame against me so that the readers could beat me.
I think it's OJ Mayo Simpson, I believe. Yeah,
that's right, and they weren't able to do it. And
no, couldn't rally the troops to the cause. Like. Yeah. So many people this season. You know what? I will put my first prediction so that at least I'm not copying you for the first one.
Okay.
All right. So the first person to go this week or next episode, I think it's going to be Brett. I think Jay wins that immunity somehow, some way. And then the tough thing is if Jay is immune, why isn't it David? And that gets back to my earlier discussion about Hannah. She's just not going to do it, and Adam's not going to risk going to rocks again. So then path of least resistance is Brett.
And that's exactly what I'm going to say. Plus, if you pay attention to the preview, we showed David making a fake idol. The only reason he would make a fake idol, in my opinion, is for a final 6 vote where he's vulnerable. He wouldn't feel vulnerable if Jay was able to vote for. I don't think the fake idol will actually sway anyone because I think he already had Hannah in his pocket. So, and I think you're right. Adam wouldn't miss it. I do think Jay wins immunity. I think Brett goes home. And I think the reason why we really dwelled on the fact that Jay played his idol in this past vote was because he doesn't win immunity at 5.
Agreed.
And that's when he could have used the idol if he held it for just one more week and Jay goes home at 5.
Yeah, I've been really high on Jay's chances to win, and it all collapsed when he played his idol, which I was going to say I don't fault him for.
No.
But... yeah, man, it would have been something, right? It's one of those, like, if he had done it, it'd be impressive, but the fact that he didn't do it, it's like, I get it, man. It's so close. And he didn't want to do it. I will say, like, you and I believe I actually talked about other people on Twitter, I was like, hey, Jay's got a clear path to the final 5 because you can't split your vote until 6. And so I figured he'd have that idol. So I was wrong about that, but I was still right. You couldn't. They didn't split the vote. There was nobody willing to stick their neck out to be like, okay, I'll be the other target. And there was no trust. Nobody could trust enough to split an idol vote, at the Will one, and there wasn't any there where Brett was still alive. So, and Brett or Sunday, and that's why I thought that. It's just good on Adam. Adam did this. That's a big play on Adam's part, which we didn't discuss. He got to play an idol when the math really didn't work out that it was going to be there.
Yeah, Adam can go right up to Jay tomorrow, apologize to him, and yell in his face that he did this. He made Jay play his idol. He's sorry, but he made Jay play his idol.
Yeah, you are probably not going to win because I did that. That was me.
That was me. I hope we do one more.
That was still there in the Jay conversation, right? Like that. It's not like Adam has gotten like that much better at talking to people about that. He was still like, when Jay was all like, "Oh man, you're screwing me, dude," and Adam like smiles and laughs and says, "Yeah, I have." But I think it's just it's gotten to a point where it's kind of like, well, that's Adam, and I think people aren't holding it against him in the way that I was so sure they would, and frankly, I think they were. But time has passed. More people have done things, and now people are just kind of like, Adam, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And so, right. So, So I think Jay goes home at 5. And no,
Speaking of Adam, I think he goes home next.
Yep. I think he also goes home next at 4. And I will say this is the one pick I was tempted to change. Because I think that there's a really good chance Adam wins this season. Yeah. And it pretty much comes down to this vote right here. But I think he's the loosest connected of that core 4.
Yeah. No. Basically, it's if Adam wins immunity or not. If he wins immunity here, then I think he could win the season. If he doesn't, he's going to go home.
It's about if David wins immunity. People are like, David's a clear threat. He has to win immunity at 4. I don't think so because Ken's not turning on no matter what.
Yeah, and I don't think Hannah is either because she's had many opportunities to do so at great personal risk to herself. So I don't see, I think it's, Adam or basically, if somehow Jay won 5 or whatever, he would obviously need to win, but that's who it is. And if he wins there, then I think he wins the game. If he doesn't win there, he goes home. And he will be pissed at Hannah. He will join the brigade. He'll be there with Zeke. It's just like, you did this to me. I did everything. I tried to help you out, and this is what you did for me. You couldn't do anything.
Oh, we're gonna get the accusatory Adam apology at Final Tribal rather than the conciliatory Adam apology.
But and to David, he might be more, like, hey, good job on you, But Hannah, he's gonna unload on her. He's gonna be pissed. She's gonna be another body that, like, her trusting, like because this isn't just something I've theorized. Like exit interviews, Michelle felt most betrayed by Hannah. Mari felt most betrayed by Hannah. Yep. Zeke thinks his whole game was lost because of what Hannah did. Now, he's accepted personal responsibility in that he didn't give Hannah what she needed. But, she's leaving a trail of bodies in a very Dawn fashion. And I know, we're very pro-Dawn space here. But, her flaws are,
she left the trail of bodies.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't do that. Just like Russell Hantz can't do that. This is a different way of doing it. But it's the same effect. So that's why she will be 3rd because she will not get a single vote. Her biggest allies are the people that will hate her the most.
So we have the same final 6 because Hannah's 3rd and Ken's 2nd and David's 1st.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So hey, I'm gonna. I feel good, man. This is gonna be my best finish ever too.
Oh man, you're gonna jinx my final 6. I'm trying to
get. I have like 9 right, man.
I have 8 right. I'm trying to get over 50%. I'm trying to blow this out of the water. This is like I am chasing Babe Ruth here, man.
Yeah, no, this is like when Sosa and McGuire, they're just like crushing records to the point where like nobody even notices that Griffey hit over 52. Because, if we're both right and you're destroying it, this will be my best finish by a mile, and I won't even be anywhere near you.
That's right.
All right, so let's get to the mailbag.
Okay.
How are we doing on time? Really long, but we'll still do a few of these. Because we're not going to be as long as last week. That's just
no.
So people, we've liked the season. We've liked these characters. So they're like, oh, it's this final 6. What a great final 6. Is this the best final 6 ever? Or what is? What do you think?
I think Returnee season.
By the way, this was Barbara Anderson's question. Usually. point that.
Yeah, so I think it's easy to say like a returnee season, something like Cambodia had a really good final six. Heroes versus Villains had a great final six. No matter what you might think of that iteration of Rupert and Colby, I think our rewatch showed they did a little more than we usually give them credit for. That's a great final six. I kind of want to focus on like a newbie season because I think that's what we really should be comparing this to. It's really hard for me to beat Kagayan. Kagayan's a great final six. It's a lot of people trying to do stuff, and it's Tony.
Yeah,
we don't have a Tony here, so
no. And I think that's your point. I mean, my answer, I wasn't going to get the no. It's Heroes versus Villains, man. All 6 of those people should be in the Hall of Fame. Whatever your personal feelings about Rupert is, my God, those are legends in the game, and they were all there. Why people think this one is so great, and look, we like them all, so it is pretty good. But it's because of the equality. As you say, there's no Tony. It's because all of these, this feels like a strong final six because nobody's head and shoulders better than other people, right? I mean, obviously, like David's has a head and shoulders better chance than Brett or Hannah, but he still has 2 other people with a possible 4th that could beat him. Hannah has been a character, when you don't necessarily like, but it's there. Brett is, a jovial type guy, and I'm not just saying that because he was heavy going into the season. It looks good, but this is what happens maybe when there isn't a great player. I'm not necessarily willing. Maybe there is a great player. We haven't seen the whole thing, but this is why people will denigrate the competition of, like a Rob or Kim. It's like, oh, that season wasn't good because those people are idiots. It's like, well, no. When somebody's that much better, everybody looks worse. And I'm not crazy and say, oh no, Wine and World is actually a collection of all-stars and they should all be brought back. And Rob got us. But when somebody's great, the other people don't look as good.
That's right.
Here, I don't think anybody's great yet. It doesn't feel like that, and that's why everybody looks better. It's a little bit of evil. It's some parody. Whereas, like people, and it's like you can tell Survivor fans are a lot of them aren't sports fans because it's not like everybody else right now is saying the NBA sucks because the Cavs and Warriors are so great. It's just they're really great, and the other teams are good, but they're just not as good. That's what's happened in past seasons. This season, I think, is more where, it feels like a lot of, pretty good teams, with a lot of good chances to win. And that's why it feels so good.
Yep, I agree.
Because, I don't think Adam is somebody that I'd be excited to see play again, I think he's got a really good chance. He's done well. He's recovered. He's got a good story. But, he's just a guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is actually something I talked about with someone else. Another one of my friends actually earlier today. I don't actually want to see Adam or David play again. I feel like their story is very wrapped up in this season in particular. I don't know that they have another story, and I don't think it would appeal on a second viewing.
No.
A guy like Jay, I do think has another story. I'd like to see him again. There's a couple other people in the season that I'd like to see again, and I think we're going to see them again. Well, I know we are. But
of this final 6, Jay's the only one that I'm really interested to ever see play again.
Right.
And that's speaking from people that have been part of the biggest Ken fan club. But I don't think you're ever going to get a Ken that's different than the Ken we just got.
No, we're not. So I agree. This is a good final 6, but as you say, it's a good final 6 because it's pretty even.
Whereas, for your example, Kagayan. Yeah, Tony, got to see him again. Spencer and Tasha have already been back and, had levels of, value in that return trip. I'd be okay with Who was back as well. Yes, exactly. And frankly, in some ways, he was better his second time around, despite, worse results. I'd be okay with seeing Trish again. Cass, we've seen again, and she's amazing. I want to see her a third time. So, that was great cast of characters. 5 of 6 have already come back. 4 of 6. Right.
And the best one hasn't come back yet.
Exactly. Whereas here it's like, Jay, I think would be so much better his next time around. Whereas, the people I want to see again are already gone. I would like to see Zeke again and Michaela again. I'd like to see Michelle again because I think she'd be one of those where, there's a lot more to offer because we didn't burn out a story. But I agree with you. I think David's done too well for his, what does David do for a second time? Like, I don't think we ever need to see Cochran again, and I'm a fan of Cochran. Cochran's done everything Cochran can do, and not just in the way that once somebody wins, they've done everything they can do. Just like, yeah, you don't get to sneak up on us twice, David. He's had the 2-season arc in one.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. David basically pulled off the Cochran arc just in one season.
All right, another from the mailbag, Ms. Sweater fan. How do you guys feel about the pacing of this season as a whole? Were you okay entering the second to last episode with 8 people? Is a full and potentially rushed endgame preferable to a languishing and underpopulated final?
I'm okay with the pacing of the season. I will say this: 8 people in the last 2 episodes is a lot, but I think it's going to work for this particular season. I don't think it would work for most seasons, but I think it will work for this season because I don't think a lot of these boots are going to be interesting. I just don't. Like, I feel like the interesting part of this game already happened. And the thing is this, I don't think that's that unusual. I feel like most games, once they get past 7, kind of get pretty straightforward, where it's basically, we're going to do this, this, and this, and the real question is going to be either the order of that, or there's going to be one trade-off. There's going to be one person where if we can get him out at a certain point, we'll get him out at a certain point.
There's a fly in the ointment that ends up winning, a bunch of rewards or immunities.
Right. Or there's the Philippines type thing where it's down to 4, and it's just a question of, are we voting out Denise or Malcolm here? Because, there's option A and there's option B. Whichever one we don't vote out is going to win.
Yeah, and obviously there's exceptions to this, right? Natalie Anderson going on a huge, interesting run at the end is an exception, not the rule. The rule typically is, we know where this is going to go, and for all the praise we're giving the final 6, you and I both predicted the same thing. If this gets down to Hannah, Ken, David having numbers, it's really not going to be very interesting other than can Jay or Adam win immunity. Because they're playing, a very simple game of, a team, the 3 of them, which is common. It's how it goes, Heroes versus villains, the greatest season in the history of Survivor. Its least interesting element was near the end.
That's right.
So,
and then it redeemed it with an actually pretty interesting final tribal council and vote, because you didn't know how that was going to play out.
Right. So, I think this is preferable. It's not ideal. Ideal would be at least one less person. And, as we explained, it's like this because of insurance that they didn't need. And that's how insurance works. Sometimes, you want to never actually have to replace the things in your house due to fire, but you have to pay it. And that's what happened. They insured themselves that in case, Julie McGee up and quits, they don't have to dedicate an entire merge episode to it. Nobody quit. Nobody evacuated. That's good. This is a good problem to have. And this is the better solution, because I do think finales where there isn't much, those are the ones that suck, man. It's 2 hours. And there's not a lot of strategizing. They throw out like red herrings that nobody believes. They come up with, this is the reward to the reward. We're going to vote out a jury member, which they had not planned. It's something they probably discussed for a long time, but they had to do because they had so much time to fill. This is when they had 15 minutes of talking about the people who got voted out while we watched them walk and light torches and set fire to their beach. They don't do any of that anymore because they have more people.
Right, and instead, in this finale, what we're going to get is every single second of this finale is going to matter. It's pretty much going to be immunity challenge, scramble, immunity challenge, scramble, immunity challenge, scramble. And that's it. There's going to be 3 sets, like 3 phases to, and it's, as you said, immunity challenge, scramble, tribal council, and that's it. And that will be the game. There's no wasted time in that.
And I know, there's some people, it's like, well, I like the other stuff. But what we're saying is that the other stuff really doesn't matter or happen very much at this point in the game. There's not a lot more, getting to know you stuff to be happening on day 38. There's not a lot more, forming alliances or whatever. This is the end game. It's time to get down to brass tacks.
Right. And I want the other stuff early on when we are getting to know people so that I can get to know people. Right. I can form those attachments to the people I am watching.
Yeah, so, of the 2 worst solutions, if I have to choose between over and under, I'll choose over because, at least it'll move. And then what will happen is the vote and even some of the final tribal council will spill into the reunion. So instead of having 1 hour of death, it'll probably really only be half an hour. And we'll all complain that he doesn't talk to everybody, but the secret sauce is all reunions suck. And it's better that, he has less time to talk to the stupid audience members. All right, quick mailbag question from Sharkules. He wants to know, what's your favorite cocktail? I'll go first. I tend to prefer a Coke and Coke.
Yes, because you don't drink. My favorite cocktail, as someone who does drink and as someone who has been doing this podcast, a little bit drunk if you didn't notice.
Pulled it off, man.
Yeah, right. Winner. My favorite cocktail is a dirty martini. And I don't have to qualify that with the alcohol because all martinis are gin. Get that vodka crap out of here.
And then one last thing from Sharkules, and we'll shorten this down. He wanted to know, what non-Survivor TV are you guys into right now? I wanted to bring this up just because this can stimulate conversation because, again, this episode didn't give us a whole lot. Pick one show that, around now, maybe it finished last week or whatever, but what's a show on TV that you were kind of excited about right now?
Well, me and you talked a lot of Westworld, so we were pretty into that show.
What did you think? As a whole, we've had the whole season, no spoilers, but what did you think?
I like the season. I do feel that it may have ended on a bit of a bum note, but it doesn't make me less likely to tune in next season. If anything, I still am excited about where it's going.
Yeah, I was really interested in the world that was going on, and I'm not somebody who's like going on Reddit and going through all the conspiracy theories that almost every single one of them proved to be true. Actually, that can't be true. I'm sure there was tons of others, but the ones that leaked out, they nailed
prominent
it.
Ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's more interesting, and there's a lot of criticism for the show that it's kind of cold and impersonal, that the characters aren't that interesting. All of that is absolutely true. I'm just okay with sometimes a TV show being different than other things that I like, and this provided just. I was interested every week. I kind of wanted to peel back the layers, and that's to a point. Like the end, it wasn't as interesting because there weren't any more layers. We'd already discovered them all, and they didn't need 90 minutes to tell us. They did. I think the producers of the show didn't understand what modern television audiences are like.
I don't think they expected people to figure everything out like they did.
Yeah. So then, we get 30 minutes of the Man in Black explaining what a scene the previous episode had already given us. But I did like, and I think actually with, wait, no spoilers.
I think you avoided it. You kind of avoided it.
I haven't quite, so I'll roll back. But, so I think it didn't end in a very interesting place for a lot of the finale. But where it's going to go, I think if they do it right, and they've learned from a lot of the troubles they actually had, it wasn't an easy season to put together, could be really great in another season. I
agree.
I'm still interested in exploring this world, especially because they still have a lot that they could do. They haven't built the world enough. So I'll just say another one, even though obviously we could both talk about that. Probably my favorite show right now is Rectify on the Sundance Channel. It's just finishing up its final season. I'm mostly mentioning it because if anybody else there is a Rectify fan, holler at me. Let's talk. Because nobody watches it because it's such a small channel. I mean, I don't get Sundance Network. We're lucky here in Canada. They actually, it's on Netflix, and they show the new episode every week. I actually told John John asked me about it once. Like, would I like it? I'm like, no. It's not long. Just watch it, and you can tell me. And probably after 3 episodes, it's like, does this ever get does anything more happen? I'm like, no, not at all. So it is an incredibly stately show. It's probably the most elegiac show on television, and it's not sad, but every week makes my heart hurt a little because it's so deeply melancholy, with every character on the show just being like this exposed wire of repressed emotion, and it's beautiful in a way that no other TV show is. If it doesn't seem interesting to you, it probably isn't, in a way that I'm not going to judge any of you for. But I'm grateful that it existed. So that's probably my big show right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say that while there are other shows I watch right now, probably my favorite shows are ones that are coming back in January and February. I think The Americans is coming back then. The Americans is one of my favorite shows. Also a show that I really like because it's based on some books I really like, The Expanse, I think is coming back in February.
What's that on?
That's on Sci-Fi. It's a
Oh,
sci-fi
okay.
show.
That's why I
Yeah.
haven't heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping over the break now that Survivor will almost be over. I'm going to catch up on the Black Mirror that they released. I have not
Oh yeah,
seen
that's
that,
good. Those are very good.
and I have yet to see the final season of The Sopranos. So I'm going to do that. Although I just realized, man, it's like 21 episodes. How'd they do that?
Yeah, because it was 2 seasons. They split it in half.
I know,
They did
but usually when they do that, they make them like 8 episodes each or something. You know?
well because they did like a normal season, and then they did 9 episodes for the last half.
Yeah. And you just finished that up for the first time ever, right?
I did. Yeah, I finished that up not too long ago.
Yeah, it's probably the missing piece in my golden era of television. I'm almost there.
That was for me as well.
Yeah, and good thing you finished up because maybe you'll be watching some Survivor in the off season. No spoilers, but
Remember, I suffer for the fans.
all right. So I think that's anything else for this week. Yeah.
I don't think so.
All right. If you want to hear more of Matt's musings, you do the live blog every week, and you can find that on our website as it's airing on the East Coast, and then hundreds upon hundreds of comments the next day, that night.
That night.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, we may not make a single dime, and survivors don't talk about us in their interviews with Josh Wiggler or anything like that. But we get comments, man. 900, 1,000 is what we do. And you can find that at www.purplerockpodcast.com. You can follow the show on Twitter at Purple Rock Pod. I am Purple Rock Andy. You have a Twitter account. Can anybody actually find you there?
Yeah, I'm Purple Rock Matt. I might not reply to you, but you can find me there.
That's right. And sometimes if you leave a good enough reply or comment, you'll get the all 4 of us liking it, and I gotta imagine that's what sex feels like.
Oh yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I wouldn't.
I don't know why I actually do know what that feels like. Yeah, look at me. I don't
know why you're imagining. I feel like I'm the one who should be a lot more.
The evidence of such actually did not show up tonight. That's why we were running so smoothly. And sorry to disappoint you all. My small child actually got to bed on time. And regular host is Purple Rock John. You can find him there and say, hey, are you ever going to come back and talk Survivor? Yes, next week he will be on the show one way or another, whether we have to delay it or not. We'll find a way to let John talk about Survivor one more time. Mostly because I like that he lets me talk about it more. It's really hard for me to ask you questions and sit back if you haven't done it.
I know, and I cut you off and everything. It must be so hard for you.
Well, I mean, John does too, but we edit that out. This is all right. If you want to send a question to the show, obviously you can respond to us on Twitter and a comment on the website, or you can email us, purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And it's tough to decide what the final song for this episode was because there was so much and 2 people, but I've come up with an excellent solution that if you're watching on YouTube, you will not see, but you'll have to wait for the podcast to get released tomorrow.